I haven't heard the sort of stories I've built this far yet.
Just wondering whether.
But you know, I wouldn't say that it hasn't happened. I won't say who, but we were in Kingston actually for the Podcasters Across Borders conference last summer, and one of our community members was evicted from the bar for bringing his own beer in.
Yeah, they don't like that too much, huh?
No, that's frowned upon apparently. Okay. Owning your own online presence. Come on, Captain.
I'm probably the least capable person to talk about.
But no, but you know what you could do? You're capable. You're capable of
However,
facilitating a conversation.
thank you, Mark. Thank you for facilitating my non-crisis of faith this morning. Good morning. I say that sort of tongue-in-cheek that I'm probably the least appropriate person to talk about owning your online presence because I struggle with that. I struggle with who I should be, what I should put out there, what I'm going to give to people, what I'm going to get back from people as a result. And I think probably the bottom line in all this is making some of those decisions. And some of those decisions will follow through, you know, when you decide to, in the next session, when Mark will take you through yourname.com with GoDaddy. Before you want to run out and buy a domain name, you have to figure out what that domain name is going to be, what it's going to represent for you, and what it's going to put out there to the world. Are you going to be, I mean, I can find you, marklevis.com, no problem, and I know what you do, what you produce. I get a consistent image of you, and I have that. I struggle with that, and I don't have that yet because I'm still trying to figure out. But it's a lot easier if you make some of these decisions up front. I have no idea where I'm going this morning.
What is it? What is it? What is it that you're making a decision on? It has to be an exact branding of yourself, or can it be multiple things?
Coffee this morning. I have a problem with the word brand too, and this is my because if somebody says to me, "What's your brand?" I think, "Oh God, you're turning me into a box of soap." And while I understand the point of that, I understand the point of the jargon, and it makes it easy for it all to understand. I don't feel like I can sell me. I don't feel like I can put me out there like a box of soap. But in some ways, that's what we have to do. We have to reach our audience. We have to find out.
You're doing great.
So you're making a decision. Yesterday you said, what is my podcast going to be? What's it going to be about? How am I going to put it together? The next step from all of that is how am I going to get it out there so that the people who listen to it, so that they'll find it, so that they know who I am, what I represent, and they can do that consistently, so that I'm presenting a consistent image out there on the internet. So that I know what Mark does, I know what to expect from Mark, I know what Scarborough does, I know what Dude does, I know what to expect from him, I know what Sage does, I know what to expect from her, and I know how to find it, how to make it, how to help.
The question is though, if we pulled everyone out here that follows you in your blog, I would bet you that they all say they know you, they know what you do, and they know who you are.
Because
am I right on that?
On some level, even though I'm uncomfortable with some of the decisions we have to make, on some level I've got the message. On some level I know that if people want to find me, they're not going to find me at catherinemattis.com. That was a decision I made.
Right.
Because that means nothing to me. They're going to find me at this point at GoDaddy.com. For me, my knitting on the internet goes out from there. Whether it's a blog post, whether it's a podcast, whether it's links I want to send you for other news stuff. And I guess in that sense, my online presence is
Well, I'll jump in and I'll add something to that. And it's not only about this concept of branding. I mean, there is a certain aspect of that. Right? The concept is who are you going to leave your content with or entrust your content with? Are you going to leave it with Libsyn? Are you going to have your own blog site? Are you going to host it on your own system? And more importantly, when you think about where people are going to find you, if you look beyond brand, it's how are people going to follow you around. So an example is, and Jay Moona talked about this in online music marketing, if you were a band, one of the best things that you can do for yourself is register your band name. Even if you're running yourself a band website, if your band website is going to be your MySpace page, instead of saying to people, go to myspace.com/, say, oh, go to the rottenpuppies.com. And when you set up your domain service, when you register your domain, you forward it to myspace.com/rottenpuppies. So people only have to remember Rotten Puppies. Scarborough, his podcast is Dixon James. He hosts it on a service called Blogspot. So it's dixonjames.blogspot.com. Sage has her podcast at quirkynomads.com. They're both easy to remember. But when you think about today in the world of the .com era, if you want to call it that, and domain names, being able to say to somebody, like, my podcast is called Just One More Book. Well, it's going to be easy for you to find it. Your first clue is going to be, probably the first thing to do when you get home, if you want to check out the podcast, you'll sit there and go, justonemorebook.com. Or if that doesn't work for you, you might put Just One More Book in Google. Now, Google also, when it presents its search results, it will present search results that are based on domain name, that are based on text that's relevant in the site, whether it's a blog post or it's static content, tags, all those little pieces add into the way you can be found. And Catherine's right, it feeds, in some respects, it feeds into your personal brand. Some people like myself have built, as Sage calls it, the cult of Mark. Which kind of happened actually by accident. I created my page. You don't podcast unless you have some sense of self, I'll call it. Some people might call it ego. I'll call it sense of self. And I know that some people follow what I do. And maybe that is the cult of Mark. I produce a number of different podcasts. The Canadian Podcast Buffet is one of them. Just One More Book. The list goes on. And I thought, well, instead of people trying to follow all these other different podcasts I do, I'll create one page. Everything will be accessible from there.
Right.
So that's part of my brand, but it's part of owning my online presence. Everything I do, now sometimes it's hard to keep up with the different shows I appear on. I've been on Dixon James a few times. I've been on Sage's show. Sometimes it might be feedback I send in. It might be a mention for feedback I send to email or type. In Sage's case, I've participated in skits on her show. And so I try to keep up. And sometimes my blogging falls behind. I might put up a post, hey, Sage just put out Quirky Quiz number 47. I was supposed to be on Quirky Quizzes 1 through 46, but I kept missing them for whatever scheduling reason. And so I'm finally on, and click here to go listen to it. And for all the other stuff I do in my blogging, my own podcasts, I generally don't constantly cross-link to the individual episodes that I put in, but I do have links on my site. Now, how you structure your website, that's a whole different conversation. But where you put your stuff and who you entrust your content with is significant. A lot of people will register at WordPress and they'll put all their stuff up there. But at that point, it's a great service and it's run. You don't have to worry about of running a website and doing your backups and all that stuff on your own because you kind of entrusted somebody else to do it, but you have entrusted them. So if something fails, if their server goes down, what do you do? Well, in the case of WordPress.com, they do their absolute best to sustain the service, but it's a free service. So if it's down for 3 days, what are you going to say? I want my money back. I don't think anybody's ever had that kind of problem, but these are the kinds of things that you face. If it's a paid service, then you have some recourse. They usually have service level guarantees. Libsyn, we talked about yesterday. We put up the show on Libsyn, and if Libsyn goes down, then you end up in a bit of a bind because suddenly your shows are only being served. Whether if you recall, my laptop's charging, so we won't be jumping right now. Anyways, with Libsyn, if you do your blog site hosting and your media file hosting on their site, then if the site goes down, your site is down, and the media files are offline. You're out of service, basically. If you end up hosting your own content, like I'll go back to Just One More Book, the website and the content on the website is all on my own server in my basement, which I may or may not leave there because over time, I've started to travel a little bit more. Sometimes I wonder what happens if my server goes down when I'm away. So now I'm starting to think about actual paid hosting solutions, the service level guarantees. But still having my own WordPress instance and managing it essentially on my own, but having another provider maintain the servers gives you some money. And then what happens now is, provided I can keep my server up, if Libsyn ever goes down, my media content files are offline, which is just as much of a problem in some respects, because people who subscribe through iTunes won't be able to get their shows. People who go to my website, who click on play to listen to a particular episode, is going to say file unavailable or file not found. And then you have other explaining to do, because people might only come to your site once. They'll try it, they might notify you and say, hey, the file wasn't there, so you're a little bit embarrassed, or you can contact them. But how many people are going to go to your site and click play, get file not found, and go, bye? So it really depends on what you're trying to achieve. Now, for most hobbyists, we don't, it's disappointing, but we don't really care. For somebody who's making money, and I don't know that there's anybody specifically in this room that has that specific objective to achieve that right now, then if you're making money and your site goes down or an element of your site disappears, now you've got a problem. Mark had a question.
I think what I've learned is the key with all of this is if you're going to buying a domain name is, I think, absolutely one of those. Just like the mic is probably the most important thing for your audience. Buying a domain name is an absolute must. I mean, I started off in Blogger. I went to TypePad. Now it's self-served on a WordPress site. All that time it was rockandrollreport.com. It gave me the flexibility to, that pointed towards the Blogger site, and that became the TypePad site, and that now it becomes the WordPress site. It gives you flexibility. People always know where to go to find your content. But if you're going from blogger.com/rockandrollreport to typepad.com/rock, they will get lost. You're just going to lose a lot of people in the shuffle. So at $6.99 or whatever it costs, even if you're not sure which one you might want to use, just buy a couple until you can figure out what you want to do. But make sure that's the central contact point for anybody looking for that content, because it'll pay off in spades. You can always take advantage of self-hosting or whatever, but you have your .com, and it's just a technical thing to have it pointing to wherever your current content is. It just makes a lot of sense, especially when it's so cheap to buy them these days.
Think about an email address. How many people have been with Simpatico and got absolutely upset with their service and said, I'm going to Rogers. Oh my God. I have to email 1,000 people and say my simpatico.ca account no longer works, and they got to send it to Rogers. That's the idea. The idea with Rock and Roll Report is he can go anywhere and point rockandrollreport.com to wherever he's putting his content. So it doesn't matter where he goes. So in the case of, I'm going to come over here to my good friend Scurvy.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Just fine, thank you. Surprisingly.
What have you ever given a thought to registering a domain?
I was sitting here feeling guilty about the fact, thinking, gee, I really should do that after 3 or 4 years now of having out there about wanting somebody to do it. I have several others for business, and that's great for just the reasons you said, that I know when I want to promote my business, no matter where I put it, and I keep changing my website format, they're going to find me. I don't even have to change my business card. It's craziness. But for Dixon James, no, I just went a little bit slow on that one.
So do you think you would register with it?
I think after this meeting, Mark, I'm going to leave you. The first thing I do when I go home is register that domain name.
That's it.
For $6.99, that's worth it.
CA domains, by the way, are a pain in the butt. I own a couple, and if you want to transfer them, they're good because the domain that you want might be taken as a .com, and it'll be available as a .ca, which is really handy. But they guard the .ca domains with much more vim and vigor than the .com domains have ever been guarded.
And charge more.
And they charge more. Yes. Yeah.
It still was around $12 it's only around $12 when I registered.
Which isn't bad, but it's almost twice in the .com domain still. Now, there's other things that you might want to consider when you register your domain. For the longest time, I've registered my domains and I've done private registration. So that $9 registration for an annual domain becomes an $18 or $20 registration to hide my home address. Because you actually have to register a domain, you have to have valid contact information, a real phone number, a real address. So what I've done now is I actually have, because of the number of things I'm involved in, I got myself a PO box. So the most recent domain I actually registered, and I got my $90 domain, which was kind of handy. And I didn't have to guard the information because the PO box, I don't care how many people know that. I just don't want Sage showing up at my house in the middle of the night.
Again. But your email address also gets displayed too, doesn't it?
Yeah, but my email address is available on my website anyways.
You don't get spam?
I get lots of spam. But I mean, spam is a pain in the butt. The way I see it, and with the stuff that I'm doing, is most of the stuff that I do, I'm doing out of interest for friends. And I'll come back to Scarborough Dude. Scarborough Dude often talks about the fact that he has very few listeners, but he has a cult of Scarborough Dude. He has a following of very loyal people, and I consider myself among them, that I can't miss his show. His show is just that compelling. Each week, I think there's 2 or 3 shows I subscribe to that are 1 hour a week. And those are the only shows that I forgive that time frame. I don't have a lot of hours to give up in a week, but those are the shows that I forgive that time. Most of the shows I subscribe to are anywhere between 10 and 20 minutes. Quirky quiz, okay, they're really funny and they go about 45 to 60 minutes as well, but they only come out once every 4 or 5 months anyways. I had a point I was going somewhere with this.
Sorry, just to interrupt. Were you suggesting that if you register your domain name, whatever, nixonjames.com, that anybody can search it and find my home address? You made it sound like this is a problem.
Yeah.
If they do a who is search on the domain name, so for example, if you do a who is search on, well, just one more book is a bad example because I did a private registration, I paid the extra money, and it hides my address. And if people want to reach me, they're going to go through a proxy service, basically, that they're going to contact me by proxy. With my other domain, I can't remember that I registered the other day, and I registered without a private, or just with an open registration. They'll see my PO box, and they'll see my email address. But my email address is on my website already. Oh, this is what I was getting to. One of the things that's really frustrating in a lot of podcasts and blogs is people hide their information, or they don't post their information. So if you want to comment on the show, they don't have a commenting feature on. Or if you want to ask them a question like, oh, where did you find this out? Or I want to interview you for my show. You don't really want to put a comment on their blog. Hey, can I interview you for my podcast? And so there's absolutely no way to reach them. Sorry?
That is a pain.
It's a huge pain. How many people here want to contact somebody on a website, a company even, and they don't have their phone number on there? Yeah, exactly. Did you learn? You want to say something?
Just basically, you ask yourself if you want to put your email on the website and you're afraid of getting spam. Is it what's worse, not getting a contact, not being able to receive email from people that genuinely wants to contact you about something, or getting spam? Because you're gonna get spam anyway.
Well, if you own the domain name, you're going to get lots of spam.
Yeah, well,
For the private registration.
Yeah, private registration you won't,
on the
yeah.
website, it's not true that because you put like your name at with the those.
Oh yeah.
@gmail.com, the robots knows about that. You change them.
No, but my point about the domain name is you'll get spam to any combination of names at your domain
Yeah.
name.
You're right.
And you'll get them all the returned messages from all the spams that were sent to other people
Yeah.
with fake addresses at your domain name. And you just can't do anything about it except delete the
Yeah.
5,000 spams every time.
Use a good filter.
So, I mean, there's other ways around that as well. That is, you can register a Gmail domain for your website that's specific to the website, and that way if people email you with that address, you know it's specifically from, you can have your private email address and your website address. So all your friends will still use, I don't know, jen@rogers.com as an example, and you'll know that all that is from your friends. And any emails that you receive that are jen@mywebsite.com, you know are coming directly from your website.
But if you're having, those who are having a website designed by somebody else, there is a feature that you can have. So they have the comment thing, and they can put in those quirky codes where it's spam proof, and so you can enter comments that way and to help reduce the spam.
there's lots of ways to reduce the spam, but putting your email address up on the website is, no matter how you do it as a graphic, or if you do it as Laurent says, with the brackets around the @ symbol, or doing all these little kludgy ways and telling people, okay, don't actually put @ in brackets and all these things. So there's all sorts of little tricks that you can use to try and keep those spam email messages down. But it's almost like, I don't know.
It's never ending battle.
It's a never-ending battle, but to me, it goes without saying that you really need to put your contact information up, because people are going to want to reach you, even if you don't necessarily want to be reached. For the people, if you're putting content up on the web, there's going to be somebody who wants to reach you for one reason or another. If you're in a niche area, you're going to want to have, well, the press might want to contact you, for example. Sage was on CBC. Now, the way she ended up on CBC might be a slightly different route, but CBC might be doing a piece on something, and they might want to invite podcasters of a particular genre on their show. Or Catherine, for example, on knitting. Oh, we want to have knitting podcasters, we want to do a piece on them. If there's no way, if they go to your website and no email address, no phone number, okay, and CBC is not going to put a comment on your site going, hey, we'd like to include you in our show. If they can't contact you via email or phone, then they're going to go to the next knitting podcast. No? Okay.
And mainstream media deals in phone almost exclusively. I mean, they might send an email to you saying, can you contact me at this phone number, or what number can I phone you? The press, mainstream press, that's the way they operate. It's all on the phone, and if they get frustrated with getting a phone number, forget about it. And as much as we attack the mainstream media, being mentioned in a newspaper is good publicity for your podcast or your website, and don't make it too complicated for them to get a hold of you.
One of the things that I often get frustrated with is companies that don't put their phone number up on their website. I don't mind paying a long distance fee to reach somebody when I'm having a problem, but they always have these web forms, and they don't copy you on your own email address. You don't get a copy of it, so you can hit submit with this web form, going, my software doesn't work. Help me. And it'll go, oh, you'll get maybe a notification a few hours later. We've received your email, thank you very much, we'll be in touch with you within 5 business days. Like, no, I want to speak to somebody now. Like, to me, I once told a company, this guy who worked at a particular company, said, I'd love to go to your website, and the only thing on that page is, here is how to reach us, and have your phone number, your 1-800 number, whatever, just in big numbers there. Think of how many customers would go to their website and go, they're going to take my call. Oh, sorry. You don't have to do it.
Basically, I've read studies that websites now are your yellow pages. So people aren't even bothered. They go to Google, they type in your name, they expect your website to come up, and they expect to see your contact information immediately. And it's an immediate medium. If you don't give people what they want, you can lose it because they go somewhere else. So it should be right there in your footer.
Or even near the top of the page.
Yeah.
I think that having your contact information also lends credibility to your website, because otherwise, they don't want people to contact them. Is this just a hacker, or who is it, or whatever?
Well, and it's good. Yesterday in our podcast also, when we did the recording session, and we debated how much information you're going to present, how many options. Well, in the podcast, somebody that's listening, you don't necessarily. Scarborough dude says, if you want to contact me, send an email to dixonjames at gmail.com. Thank you. I don't even have to. I just type in DI and then Gmail fills in the rest of it. But so we talked about that. But on your website, you can put as much contact information as you want. You don't even have to put it on your main page. I have a contact link on my web page, which I can't really show you right now. It's a page called Contact, and you go there, it goes, here's my phone number, here's my email address, here's my Skype ID, here's I think I have my Twitter ID up there, a link to my LinkedIn profile. I mean, that's a whole other debate, is how many different social media sites are you going to be on. But ultimately, you want to make it as easy as possible to reach you in the way that they are most comfortable reaching you.
How do these bots spam? I mean, because I notice in my Gmail account, it's just constantly filled with spam, but on my actual domain name account, which is on my website, it never gets spam. And I noticed that I do have bad behavior, the plugin for WordPress on my WordPress page, and I see hundreds of, it stops hundreds of spamming going through. I'm wondering if that helps with stopping spam as well. If it's just like an automated thing that's supposed to go find your address.
The way, does anybody, I can explain it. Does anybody else want to take a shot at explaining? Yeah, do it a lot of times.
Constantly changing. I mean, I get comments on my site, and for a while I thought they were legitimate comments because they would literally say something like, really found your post interesting, you're great, but then you'd look at where the domain link back, and it was like Forex trading or whatever, Viagra.com or whatever. But they're becoming so intelligent that they can literally take bits out of your post and mix it in with the message. So it's like, your post on the hungry rats was very interesting. I didn't know that about them. And your first impression is, wow, cool, that's a great comment. But in fact, that's a spam comment, and they're getting smarter and smarter. That's why I'm saying it's a constant battle. WordPress has a good system of tracking a lot of that stuff, but sometimes your first reaction is, especially if you don't get a lot of comments, it's like,
We actually, I did an interview about diabetes once, and I get a lot of people who submit comments on diabetes on this post. And there were a couple of people who actually put really intelligent comments on there that link back to a site. Some of them actually link back to diabetes community sites, which is very cool. But I remember one in particular linked back to a site which was clearly pushing pills. And so, but the comment, either an amazingly advanced intelligent robot or a real person, because they commented on specific stuff that was in my podcast. And what I did is, I accepted the post, but I wiped out their URI. So I thought, okay, that's good. That's contributing to the conversation. Thank you very much, but you're not getting any link love from me. And I've done that several times.
So then, do you have a disclaimer on your website saying that your post will be monitored and may be edited?
No, actually I don't. On my site, when people submit a comment, it goes into moderation, and as soon as they hit submit, it'll go, your comment is in moderation.
Okay.
So I generally don't edit the comments. I don't play with the actual text of what they've written. The only time I do that is if they put a link in their comment that links back to their pill pushing site. So I'll take the link out and I'll take it out of their URI from their source website. So
I would never recommend editing. I would never recommend editing a comment. I would think you either don't accept it or post it as is. I actually have 2 comments sitting in moderation. They've been sitting there for over a week, and I'm not sure if they're essentially libelous. So I'm trying to determine. I'm getting more information, so I haven't posted them, but I would never edit a comment. I think that's an issue of communication between your readers or listeners and you. And I think if people started to think that you were editing or modifying their comments anyway, there's the trust issue, and I think you would probably get less comments essentially.
But as I understand the thing you're doing with that particular comment, you're removing only the link, but you're not really editing like the content.
No.
Because you have some blogs that the blogger will comment with bold or different like HTML, and if your system doesn't accept that, it simply removes it, and it's not really editing. It's like in between.
No, I mean editing the
content
itself.
it wouldn't
I
change
would
the
never
message.
change the actual comment. The other stuff, yeah, and I've done that. I've taken out link backs, but the actual substance of the comment, I would never play around with. Because it wouldn't take very long for a person to go, that's not what I said. And the internet, bam, it gets out there.
And the mistake you make is if you edit, somebody will post up on somebody else's blog or on their own blog going, hey, I posted this comment, and this bastard changed my comment. And now you got a PR problem.
And that's not what I meant, or it's not what I said.
I totally agree with that. There have been some instances in my blog whereby some of the audience are actually not aware or cognizant or unassuming this when, say for example, they post a piece of understands the implications of that.
Yes.
Because by being there, they're opening themselves up to spammers, and I'm not sure that they're aware of that. I know it's a bit presumptuous, but I wouldn't want to have somebody's home phone number or something when they're trying to contact another person in the audience after being at an event.
No, that's good.
Yeah. And that's absolutely right, and I've had that before where there's people who don't get comments. I interviewed a number of people, and people send comments on my website or even send emails to me going, "Oh, wow, I haven't spoken to you in years," or, I interviewed, it doesn't matter who I interviewed. But I've interviewed some celebrities, and then I get contacted as though I'm the celebrity. It's like, no, look at the website. This is it's an interview website. This is just a guess. But you'll get that a lot. People get excited about that.
What are your thoughts about just removing the comment capability of that blog? I mean, I know having comments is great. It promotes conversation, but personally, I don't feel I have time to monitor it, and if it's not monitored, it might be just full of spam, and I really don't want my blog being that spam blog stuff. It's just I don't want on mine.
I'm gonna rope Sage in because Sage has just been sitting here quietly. So I want you to answer that question.
I think it is important to give them some way to get in touch with you, because that's part of what people appreciate about podcasting.
Like an email address.
Exactly. So as long as they have a way to get in touch with you, then don't have comments. It's not, it's nice for people to have. People are more likely, in my case, excuse me, to email me than to comment anyway. And I've asked people about it, and what they say is that what I do is fairly polished and formal, and they don't feel like they can post a comment and say, "Oh, hi, that was really funny, I fell off my chair," or whatever. They just don't feel like it's the proper venue. So people are more likely to email me anyway. So I don't think it's essential. I think if you don't want to do it, you don't need to.
You know what you do? You're going to hold on to this mic, and I'm going to be a runner, and then you can answer some questions for me. Anybody else want to say something?
You need to, if you don't want to put comments on your blog, simply because you don't want to moderate it, or the spam thingy. Personally, I think it's not a good reason. And my blog gets quite a few comments, but I'm using WordPress engine, so I've installed Akismet and Bad Behavior. There's a couple of plugins that when you combine them, do a really good job of keeping the spam bots away and allowing people human to comment. So I don't really need to moderate, and so far I can see. Perhaps at first a couple spam went through, but when you mark it as spam, the plugin will learn, and eventually it will filter perfectly. And I never had any human comments being taken by that plugin as spam. Mark as spam a false positive. It never happened to me. I'm not saying it's impossible or improbable, but I don't think that being scared of spam is a good reason not allowing comments, but that's my view.
Do you have anything? Chris Brogan wants to add to the conversation.
That's important.
If you're still having spam problems, you have software problems, not spam problems. Between Akismet and Spam Karma 2 on WordPress, nothing gets through. No comments.
What about pingbacks?
What about who?
The pingbacks. Now, those blogs that copy your content and then pingback?
Oh, I love pingbacks. You know why? Because every time I put a post out, I make sure there's links to my site in that post. You want to keep putting stuff out on the web that's my junk again and again and again, make sure you come back to me.
But do you keep all that stuff? Like if you put a blog...
Oh, I don't normally. I mean, if I'll go through and kind of hand pick that a little bit.
Okay.
But, usually I go to look and see what it is.
Because it says like, Fred wrote an interesting post and then...
Right.
Actually, what Chris says is really interesting. Because there have been times I've done this. I don't do it very often, but when I create a post, I'll actually mention somewhere in my post my own blog, the blog that it's sourced from, and put a link to it. So it's kind of weird because you're linking to your own site in your own blog, but it tackles that exact problem of link backs, where somebody might rip your content, but you still have your link within your post. Sure.
I was just going to ask you to repeat the software that Chris just mentioned.
There's two of them for WordPress. One of them is called Akismet, and the other one is called Spam Karma 2. Do you use both of them, Chris? You use both. Okay, I only use one. I think I use Akismet, and I get a trickle of spam that gets through.
And Akismet is standard in your WordPress installations, is it not?
It comes with WordPress when you install it. Akismet.
I use Akismet, and I don't have any trouble at all. The other thing that I changed, my entries go back to 1995, and so the spam bots will go after the really old entries because they figure that you're not really paying attention to those comments. So I only allow comments on the past 30 days, and now I think I have to deal with 1 or 2 spams a month, and that goes straight into the Akismet spam box. So it's not a problem for me.
So we've kind of strayed from the main topic, which was owning your domain or owning your presence online. But I like the fact that we talked about this because these are some of the challenges that you face by being online, especially when you own your own presence. When you hand off your presence, when you hand off a lot of this stuff and you don't have your contact information, you don't have these issues. You have other issues. What it comes down to, though, is I highly recommend that if you're going to be online, whether you blog, or whether you podcast, or whether you put up static content, if you're addressing a niche, if you're filling a need, if you're sharing information that other people might be interested in, post some way for people to reach you. Now, I'm one of these people, and Chris does this as well. We'll get Chris to talk about this. That I put my phone number, my cell phone number is even on my website. And I've received a few phone calls as a result of that. I've yet to receive any prank phone calls or anything. What about you?
I stole the idea from Robert Scoble. It seems like a good guy to steal from. And I put my cell phone number on my blog about a year ago. And I also on Twitter do a game called Call Chris where I put my cell phone number out to whoever's on Twitter at the time. And between the two, I occasionally get someone who wants to call at a strange time because it's a global world now. And of course, if someone in Hawaii is just getting ready to go to bed, wants to call me. It's also about 4:40 a.m. But I never have any problems. One time ever, I met another Chris Brogan, and not in the Twitter sense, but I met another Chris Brogan who was somewhere in like Oregon, and even that wasn't exactly a prank call. He just wasn't anyone I would have for dinner.
By the way, Robert Scoble is a really good guy, and he got the idea from me.
I will say that you do have the advantage of having male first names. And I have a name, nobody has any idea whether I'm a man or a woman, but if my name were Katie, I would never put my cell phone number up for any reason. And just to give a balance for what you two are saying, though people don't know if I'm a man or a woman, judging from my name, I'm a privacy freak. And all my domain names are proxy. You don't know anything about me. I would never put my cell phone number. It took me a really long time to mention that I lived in Toronto. There are millions of people who live in this city.
But when you came out on Toronto, she was like a champion of Toronto.
Yes. So that's the other side of the coin. Be careful what you put out there, especially if you have a female first name, because there's some big weirdos out on the web.
Two of them right over there. But, that's a really good point. And I have talked to a few people who've been contacted through the internet or harassed online or on their websites who are women. What you might want to do, if you're not doing the phone number, that's fine. That's good. Depending on what business you're in, if you're doing this blogging or podcasting for a business or to demonstrate thought leadership or to showcase your expertise in knitting or scripting or whatever, you can always get a separate phone line. You can either get a voice feedback number like you have, that people can leave voice messages for you. We talked about K7 and J2. Post that. People will send you a voicemail message. They're not going to actually reach you. The other thing that I know some people do is they'll actually get a separate phone number that might ring that they can forward to their cell phone as well. but they'll get a separate number. So that way, if they get a phone call from and the number shows up, the number that rings is a particular phone number, they'll know, oh, this is from my website, as opposed to this is anybody.
I don't have a K7 number, and I don't have it anymore because I got a very frightening phone call.
Oh, no,
and they have no idea where you are. It's a number in Seattle, but it was somebody who had obviously listened to my show, knew I was a woman. It scared the hell out of me, and so I don't have one anymore. So.
Now, I don't put pictures of my kids online. I know there's some people who do. I know there's some people who live a very open life online, and from what I've heard, they don't get bothered, generally speaking. There's certain lines that I won't cross, but for the most part, my information's online. If I travel, some people know that I'm going to be at a conference, but if I'm going to travel, that's not entirely true, because I have blogged about going to Vancouver in advance when I was going to be away for a week. Germany, I announced like 2 days before I went, or the day that I left.
I don't announce it. If I'm going somewhere, because I travel a lot, it's known that I travel, I'll announce it. But if the family is going on a vacation, I'll talk about it after the trip.
Yes.
Because otherwise it's like saying, all right, nobody's going to be in the freaking house this week. Pick your day, you know? So
well, there's other tricks that you can do too, which Andrea and I do with Just One More Book, and that is we record a whole, we're constantly recording. It's really easy to record our show. We go into a coffee shop, turn on a recorder, talk about a kid's book, shut it off, top and tail it, put it out. So we put out 3 reviews a week, but we would probably record 4 or 5 of them. So do the math over time, we have a cache of content. So when we go on holidays, like we went to New Brunswick this past summer, we've gone for it worked out to be like 2 weeks and 2 days because there was no way I was going to publish a show when I got home. We just queued up all the shows. Andrea did all the blog posts, I had all the content ready, I uploaded it, and WordPress, you queue them up. As far as everybody knows, you're still at home.
Yeah, but you need to be careful, because if you're talking about the weather or something, it's winter, and suddenly you're posting that because you're taking vacation in the summer.
Depends on the show, of course. Yes,
yeah,
if you're doing a daily news show, yeah.
No, but sometimes just in Just One More Book, maybe you're talking, if it is a snowstorm or something extraordinary, maybe you're talking with Andrea first before talking to one book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you have to watch that kind of time-sensitive content.
Yeah, it also depends really on your branding and how you present yourself. Like the Rock and Roll Report is not necessarily about me. It's about the music that I enjoy and that I promote. So people are contacting Mark at the Rock and Roll Report. They're not contacting Mark. So so there is a bit of a, people aren't going to kind of call me and say, what are you up to or how's your holidays? Because I don't necessarily get into that detail. They might call me to say, man, you think that band was great? You should listen to this band. So it's a bit different. I have a different kind of online brand or whatever. And it also allows other people to get involved. And I've had people writing for the blog. And it's all of a sudden it's Matheson from the Rock and Roll Report. The Rock and Roll Report is essentially the brand, and that's what it stands for, but it's not necessarily about me, which is my problem I ran into with my MySpace page, because it started getting mixed up between the brand and what it's about with the personal kind of connections that I started to build, and it was going to be complicated.
Well, and if you call people like Chris Brogan, his voice answers the phone, and they go, "Hi, is that Chris?" And he always goes, "Oh, hold on, I'll go see if Mr. Brogan's available for you." So you create those illusions, right?
Right.
It's Robert Scoble speaking. I'll go get Chris Brogan for you. Anybody else?
Oh dear.
What time are we at? Are we?
Apparently it's coffee throwing time.
It's almost 11, Mark.
It's almost 11. Is that when we're supposed to do our next?
I have
piece?
no idea.
You missed a couple of spots for the door over here.
Yeah, I didn't know.
You slept in, dude. Sunday. Schedule. Oh, we missed our 10:30 break. It was good though. 10:45. Oh, it's our 10:40. So we're already late for GoDaddy. So I'm going to hand over to Bob, and he's going to walk you through registering a domain while picking a domain name. Bob's going to lead this.
Are we leave this?
We'll lead this. All right. Do you need a dog?
Yeah, I have it.
Oh wait. This is the along with it. I'm sure you do.